So now we have Dr. Cynthia Macri. She's the Special Assistant to the Chief of Naval Operations for Diversity, and she's going to talk about having it all in a life in medicine.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Macri, Dr. Cynthia Macri, and I am a Navy doctor. And despite the fact that I feel personally that I owe everything all to the Navy, these are actually my views only and not those of the Navy. And so just please take it as not a policy or statement or anything. It's just my views personally. So, but why do I think that I owe it all to the Navy? It's mainly because when I got into medical school, I took a Navy scholarship. And if you don't have any money at all, if your family doesn't have the money, it's probably one of the best ways to get a free education. And your payback is basically as a doctor. So I did that. I had no debt when I graduated from medical school. I have no debt now. My house was paid off by the time I was 45, and I think that you can have it all and you can do it all if you don't have that burden of finances. So I'll get back to that a little bit later. But the title of my session is Having It All, because I really do believe that I do have it all. Part of it is, what you want. What do you consider all, right? And the other part of it is what you had to give up along the way and whether or not it really was expendable. So if you were me, you may not think you have it all. But this is kind of the broad categories of what I think I have that and was able to preserve throughout medical school and my medical career. So one, I do have a family. I have a great kid who is now a senior at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. I do still play competitive adult women's soccer at the national championship level. And, and yeah, I'm a doctor. And I also got to choose the specialty that I wanted. All right. So, frankly, I chose to be a surgeon. And I started out as a general surgery intern at the National Naval Medical Center in Bethesda. And I switched to OBGYN because I wanted to take care of women with cancer. So I didn't have Plan B if I didn't get the fellowship. At the time, there were only 26 spots nationwide. But because I was in the Navy, I have actually spoken to program directors, and they said, well, there wasn't a risk of me going into practice across the street when I finished my fellowship, and that I could bring their practices or their ideas, the way they did business, back to the Navy, and that would be kind of a unique way for them to spread their practice patterns. And so I actually was considered at that time to be a good risk to that particular fellowship. So I'm going to present a few general topics, like what you need to, or what some of the things that I did or what I would recommend doing so that to ensure your successes in all of those areas. If there's other things that you think should be added to the list besides family, career, and outside activities and community service, please feel free, and I'll see if that's somewhere on my list or of things that I have and I'm probably just taking for granted. All right. So the number one thing is I tend to be interactive. So if I ask a question and then I pause, all right, that means you need to give me an answer. All right. And then if I say, who does this, or raise your hand, raise your hand. Okay, you got to mean it. And the other thing is that sometimes I say things that I think are funny. All right. And sort of throw me a bone, give me a little chuckle or something. All right. Okay. So, let's start with the basic premise of being successful, right? What are those characteristics? What do you think, is some of the main things or characteristics for success? Yeah, you have to be happy, right? You have to be happy. You have to be passionate about what you're doing, right? You have to maintain who you are, right? You have to have your integrity, right? It's always, trust over threats, right? If you want something to be accomplished, or especially with your children, right? you have to trust them. They have to know you trust them, as opposed to you have to threaten them with timeouts or whatever people threaten their children with. I really don't feel like I did that a lot. You have to have your integrity, and then what's really important is competence. Okay, so if you attack everything with gusto or with passion, you can't help but, be at the top. Right? So you have to, don't be second guessing yourself every step of the way. Choose something and then just go for it. Right? And don't let the detractors or the distractors take it away from you. All right? Because they're not you. Other people are not you. They don't have the same goals. They don't have the same passions. They don't have the same expectations of themselves. And so don't let them impose their expectations on you. All right? And that to me was critical in child rearing. Okay? I have 0 domestic skills. All right? So so number 1 is prepare yourself for that greatness. Okay? So for those of you that are interested, you can email me and I will send you this special secret packet of information, right? So this is, some of the reasons why people don't go to medical school, don't go into medicine, they don't know how to do it, right? Right? So if you look at the demographics of this conference and Northern California in general, maybe California as a state in general, there's a significant Mexican American population, correct? Right? It's Mexican. It's very, very diverse, right? So according to the census, among Americans over the age of 25, only 9% of Mexican Americans have a college education, right? That means that some of them, you got to figure, are married to each other. So you have to figure that more than 90% of households do not have a person who went to college. So how would they know, right? How to get to medical school? So how are any of those kids going to find out what the path is? Right? And some people choose, they will enlist in the military because they think that's the way to get an education, or they'll become a nurse because they think that's the way to become a doctor, but that's not really true. So this is a roadmap. This is something that can guide you from high school to college to medical school to postgraduate training. That's your internship and residency. Okay? And then there's this last column is on licensure. Because if you don't have a license, you can't practice medicine, right? So that's got to be the big goal, right? And then here's the secret: how to improve, unofficial guide to improving your performance on standardized tests. Okay? So you all have test anxiety, right? About the MCATs, right? You didn't care about the SATs or the ACTs too well, right? Because it didn't matter, right? You weren't going to college anyway, right? But the MCAT, everyone's told you that the MCAT is this big, big, hard, incredibly difficult test that's going to keep you out of medical school, right? Well, that's not the intent of the MCAT, actually. It's not intended to keep you out of medical school. So what this secret unofficial guide does is it helps you to relax a little bit and to see that you, in fact, can finish the test. Because finishing the test is half the battle, right? What do you spend all your time doing in the test? Yeah, you read it, right? And then you change your right answers to wrong answers. Because you agonize about what is the question really asking, okay? So I have a reading list, which I pulled off the College Board website. And it is the list of classics, right? So some of you already read it, right? But most of you read those books because you had to take a test or write a paper, right? So you're mentally highlighting while you're reading, which slows you down. Okay, you're not going to be highlighting during the MCAT, right? So what you can do with the reading drill, it's just a drill, is pick a book, and usually pick one that you've made the most fun of in the past, like War and Peace, Crime and Punishment, all those books that you didn't want to read, and just read for 30 minutes every day. Every day, no weekends, no, you waste more than 30 minutes every day, trust me. All right, so just read for 30 in a place like a desk, well lighted, someplace that simulates the MCAT testing conditions. but for 30 minutes. And you can just write down the number of pages that you read. And in 3 weeks, unless you're an incredibly fast reader, in 3 weeks you can see that you can eliminate all those distractions that you had the first day or two, right? And that by the end of the 3 weeks, that you probably will up to double the number of pages that you can read in 30 minutes. All right, and once you know, you have visualization, you can see that you can increase your reading speed. And the other thing that does is it subliminally, you pick up on the way that words and phrases are seen, and you see it in context. Okay, so instead of wondering, what is that question really asking, right? You actually can figure it out because you're not hung up on that phrase or the way things are stated, right? So you can try it out if you want. So just email me and I can send you the package. I have to admit, full disclosure, that I have a file in my computer called Handouts for College Students. And it does include the 2 pages on the health profession scholarship for the Navy. You can throw those 2 pages out if you're not interested. All right, so prepare yourself for greatness. Look at the roadmap, know what's ahead of you so that you can plan accordingly. All right, and remember, medical school is not a big, scary thing. There's only 2 more years of classes. And the worst class you're going to take is biochemistry. Right? If you take it in college or even in a community college, it's not a foreign language when you get there. Okay? But that's the worst class you're going to take. Dissecting stuff, that's really fun. I mean, that's cool. You learn stuff by seeing and doing. Biochemistry is a little hard to see and do, You don't get to blow stuff up in med school, only in college. All right? So that's one. Number 2 is have concrete goals. All right? And you know what? If you want to be a doctor, make sure absolutely everybody you know knows you want to be a doctor, because then you're going to have to get there. Right? Because otherwise, like, you're embarrassed, right? It's like, oh, I wanted to be a doctor, but, right? Okay, so make sure you have concrete goals. So you make a life plan. This is what I want, right? Who wants kids? Right? You guys want families, right? Who wants to stay active? Right? Who wants to be able to bake seasonally correct cupcakes? Yeah, okay, everybody wants to do the girly stuff, all of that, everything that you do now, right? You want to be able to do that stuff too, right? But when you graduate from med school, you're going to have this incredible skill set, that nobody else has. Almost nobody else has, right? And so you're going to be able to do those cupcakes, right? Also. But some people don't have all of the skills that you have, right? So let other people drive the carpool. Do not be guilted into driving carpool and doing stuff like that. Do not be guilted into having to watch every tooth erupt for your kid, right? Or watching them drool. I mean, they don't do a lot, for the first 6 months of life. But everybody gets all wrapped around every one of those little milestones. If that's all you have in your life, then it's really important, okay? But if you can take a 68-pound tumor out of a 16-year-old, all right, how many ladies in that carpool lane do you think did that, right? All right? So you're going to have an incredible skill set, and you're going to be an incredible role model, and so don't give that up. That's not something I would put on my give-up list, all right? Okay, then make a list. Make a list of must-haves for your life. What do you have to have? All right, I had to have a girl. Luckily I got one. People always ask me that. How come you only have one kid? Well, I got my girl. So anyway, but what do you have to have, right? And some of them don't have. Some of them can be pretty, like really concrete. I got to have a house, right? I want to have a house. I want to have a family. I want to have a Lamborghini, right? I mean, and then make a list of what are the things that you're willing to give up to get those things that you want. All right? So one of the things I would put high on my list of what things I'm willing to give up is a police record. Okay? You don't want to do anything foolish that's going to get you that record. No matter how many of your friends, alleged friends, are pushing you in that direction. Okay, what do you think the number one thing that you guys are, that college students are at risk for? Underage drinking, right? Don't do it. You know why? Because somebody else, you can be a construction engineer. You can be an electrical engineer. You can be sitting in some cubicle doing whatever, with an underage drinker or DUI on your record, right? But that's going to show up as a police record on any of your background checks, right? So don't do stuff like that, right? What else? Okay, I was told when I was playing all Navy soccer, I was told that the optimum, not the mean, the optimum number of tattoos is 4. Everybody had a soccer ball tattooed someplace on their body with their number on it, right? In fact, I wanted to be number 11 because that was my number. I'm old, so I could only remember 2 things, right? I could only keep 2 thoughts in my head at a time. So they said, oh, Dr. Macri, what number do you want to be? I said 11. And so this other girl from George Mason University, who was a Navy lawyer, actually, she goes, well, I want number 11. And everybody said, well, Dr. Macri, Captain Macri outranks you, so she gets what she wants. And so she lifts up her, I can't do this on film. She lifts up her shorts and she goes, I want number 11. And she's got this soccer ball number 11 tattooed. Anyway, I said, okay, well, I'm not that committed to number 11. You can have number 11, right? So anyway, but don't do stuff, if you want one, just have it someplace, but not, visible. Part of your professional kind of, persona, right? And it might be cool now, but remember, I tell my daughter, if you want something like, if you want that done now, just imagine it on me, because that's what it's going to look like on you 31 years from now. I can see some of you have had mothers tell you the same thing, right? Don't do that because it's going to look, imagine me doing that, okay? All right, so, and then, okay, I do have to make one comment on finances, all right? So what do I do for community service? My big community service, I could do Habitat for Humanity, go with my church and, build a house for one day, once a year, right? Or I could do the leukemia lymphoma walk, or give everybody that I know $50 so they can do one of the things for other charities, right? But I decided when I looked at the numbers that I wanted to increase the number of underrepresented students that were entering fields of science and medicine. All right, you guys have heard of STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And the big thing is, we got more engineers and blah, 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 right? All right? But we need more doctors, no less than we need more engineers. It's just that that nobody has these medical degrees that are doing being the spokesperson for American education, right? So I decided I was going to do that. And so I said, I'm going to do a high school program for kids from underserved areas, but I'm going to mix them up with the kids from the suburbs, because the kids from the suburbs, they're going to get to medical school regardless, right? Because they have the roadmap, they have the parents that have the education, they have the money, right? So they need to know what decisions other people, normal people, have to make every day, right? And that was the big part of the education of this group, is that some kids in the suburbs who get $20 a day for Starbucks, right? They had no idea that other kids had to make that. That there's actually families in America with no car, right? Or can't lease a car every 3 years. And it's true. Some people just don't know that. So you have, and since the top, I think, quartile contributes the greatest percentage of med students, there's going to be a huge gap in experiential gap among students that are entering medical school and or that are physicians and the patient population, right? So that's what I was trying to fix, right? Because you go to events like this, I know all those exhibitors out there at the career fair because I see them at all these other recruiting events. But if you're only recruiting college students, we're all recruiting from the same pool, right? So I wanted to make that pool, see what I could do to make that pool a little bit bigger. Because if you knew you could do a medical skill, like tie a surgical knot or do some laparoscopic surgery, right? That's something that sticks with you, and maybe it'll make that career as a surgeon, for example, more concrete, something that's attainable. Because it's not, everything's not difficult, right? I can tie a knot. So, so I did that. I applied for a grant for $10,000 for my university, and of course was denied because it was high school, you know, not the recruitable market. But since I had taken this Navy scholarship, I knew you were wondering where I was going with this. Since I had taken the Navy scholarship in 1979 when I started medical school, and my husband actually did too, which I didn't even know him in medical. So he was in San Diego for residency. I was at Bethesda for residency, so I didn't even know him. But he had taken the scholarship also. We had no debt, so I was like, all right, I don't even know how much it costs to put this program on, but I'm going to do it anyway. And now we've been doing it since 2004 in, you know, 4 states and several counties in the Washington, D.C. area. And I'm tracking 300 students on Facebook, actually. So, I mean, maybe some of those kids will go to med school, right? But I feel better. I mean, I feel like I could do it because I didn't have any debt. So you can be more passionate about all these things that you do. You can do more community service. You can create things. You can do stuff if you don't have to pay your mortgage and your loans, right? Even if you just only have to pay your mortgage, right? That's better than paying back $400,000 instead of just $2. Okay. So anyway, that was a good decision that I made to be able to continue to do what I wanted to do, what I wanted to accomplish. Okay. So then the other thing is want what you have. All right. So like if I had had a boy instead of a girl, I promise you I would have loved him just as much as I love my daughter. But I really wanted a girl. So my daughter, you know, I was the last music that the last concert I went to, I think, was when Bruce Springsteen was like the opening act for somebody else, right? I don't even remember who else it was. And when I went to college, drive up into the college campus, and the Beach Boys' Endless Summer is playing from absolutely every stereo in the quad, right? You guys don't even know who the Beach Boys are, right? All right, so anyway, that was the last music I listened to. So I'm listening to the radio in my car. My daughter's listening to the radio in my car. And she goes, this song by Sheryl Crow, whoever that was, right, comes on. And she's like, oh, yeah, Mom, this is totally you. And it's that line in the song that says, it's not getting what you want, it's wanting what you've got, right? And I was like, I thought that was incredibly insightful that my child, who I had not spent every waking moment with, that my child who I had not given up work to stay home with my kid, right? You hear that a lot, right? Like that's the gold standard. It's not. My daughter knows me well enough, right, to actually, I thought that was pretty insightful for her to say that to me in the car. But that's actually true. You have to really, you know, you have to want what you have, right? And and oftentimes that will lead to getting more of what you think you might want. All right. So, and then whatever you do, just put passion into it, okay? So act like you want whatever it is that you're doing, right? Because otherwise you seem, you know, you don't have conviction. Right, and it's hard to put in 100% into something if you don't have conviction about it, right? So what's holding you back, right? I want to be a doctor. What's holding you back? Grades. All right, grades. What else? Doubt. Yeah, who's putting that doubt in your head? Right. I mean, what is it? Is it, you know, that you're a girl? I mean, you know, what's holding you back? Just put that out of your head. You know, just you're gonna want it and you're gonna get it, right? So attack it that way, and if you fall short, you know, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to have a college degree, right? I mean, a lot of times people say, oh, I don't know if I want to go to med school because I can do X, Y, or Z as a this. Something without a college degree. You know, people are always distracted by free clinics and stuff like that, All right. Oh, but if I take a year off, I can work in this free clinic. Well, I can tell you, going to med school after taking a year or two off, unless you're in a post-baccalaureate program or you're getting a master's degree, okay, that's going to make med school harder, not easier. Right? You do not need the time off. All right. And don't think I'm going to take a couple years off so I can have a family, because you're going to have that family for a really long time. Right? Not just 1 or 2 years. And you're not necessarily going to have that family in that 1 year that you take off, right? Unless you can predict something better than what most people can do about pregnancy. All right? So don't put that out. Put that doubt out. Right? Okay. So I think the last thing I have, yeah, that's my notes from Dr. Britt. Okay. So the last thing I have is be a role model. Okay? Because you guys, what do people always say? You need a mentor, right? Yeah. You need a mentor. All right? Are you guys still looking? Yeah. Okay. What are you looking for? What are you waiting for? Right? I mean, what are you looking for? I mean, how do you know you found one if you don't know what you're looking for, right? But you need a mentor, right? So how about while you're looking for one, why don't you try being one? Right? How many kids do you think are looking up to you right now? Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of people looking up to you, right? So be one. And then you'll know what you're looking for. Right? And you don't need one, right? You can have like 1,000 mentors. Right?
I have like 5 mentors.
Yeah. Right. And so if any of them is telling you you can't do it, right?
No.
Yeah, it's a time to move on, right? All right. So so about grades. All right, I had really bad grades. In fact, my health professions advisor basically told me, we can't recommend you because your grades are too low. It'll ruin our reputation, right? And I have to say I had a 3.11 when applying to medical school, all right? And I had average MCATs, nothing special, right? Well, but I didn't have plan B. Like, what do you do with a bio degree, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I had to either get another degree, or I could be a camp counselor. I mean, really the options were fairly limited in 1979 if you didn't get into med school, right? So, so I didn't have plan B, so I applied anyway. And the point is I had to be more interesting than everybody else because I probably had among the lowest grades, right? And so I had to think of, oh man, what have I done? What's different about, because I think I'm not special, right? I mean, I'm like really average. There's like nothing special, right? So I'm trying to look at this and go, geez, what can I put on this thing? So I didn't shadow a physician in college. I didn't have a car. I didn't know any doctors. In fact, I didn't even know anyone in the state of Pennsylvania. Literally the entire state of Pennsylvania when I got there, or anywhere on the continental United States. And so I didn't have, really, that many options. But when I was in high school, I was in Islamabad, Pakistan. I graduated from the international school there. I was kind of betting there weren't a lot of people that graduated from the internet. And I worked in a leprosy hospital in Rawalpindi. And when I came back to the States for college, I kind of browbeat everybody, all these dorms around me too. I did a knit-a-thon from these. I mean, felt like I was really stretching it, I did a knit-a-thon. I went home for Christmas, and we sat around our living room and knitted for 8 hours, and it was a 10 cents an inch. And so we kind of all the number of inches of knitting that we did, because we used the bandages for physical therapy, because we couldn't get ACE wraps there. So you use these knitted bandages, how they stretch, and it provides the heat around the paraffin treatments. And so we donated not only the money, we made like $280 or something like that. Sent it all over to Pakistan, sent it to Leprosy Hospital with those bandages, right? So I put that on my list of things. But people weren't doing stuff like that back then, right? I didn't have the checklist. Nobody told me how to get to med school because my grades were too low, right? So if your grades are low, do something interesting. Be someone interesting, right? And maybe they'll overlook the fact that your grades are marginal. I mean, my grades weren't like pathetic, but they were pretty marginal. And the other thing is, of course, I played soccer on the men's team in college by attrition. I mean, you know how that works in college, right? You try out for a team, and then, the starting team is this, and they're like superstars, right? And it doesn't really matter who the subs are, as long as they can get 90 minutes for soccer, 90 minutes out of them, right? Like how many minutes of football do you think all those 100 people on the sidelines play? Right? Yeah, and how many of those people do you think ever play a minute of make a living playing football? Right? Like 0, right? And so I just followed the rules. That's all you have to do. Just follow the rules, right? I went to every practice, rain or shine. Of course, I went even when I had to leave organic chemistry lab early, which could have impacted my organic chemistry grade, but I had to play soccer, and so that was interesting. It was different. I made the men's team. I did play a few games when we were way ahead or way behind, but I got to play. Right? The point is I still got to play through college. And so those were a couple of things that may have made me more interesting than everybody else. So, following that checklist may not be you, right? Who made up that checklist anyway, right? So if it's not you, you don't have to do it. Do something that's more relevant to you, or more relevant in your community, something that you can really get excited about. So when somebody asks you something, like they ask you a question about that, like when they asked me in my interview about leprosy, I could tell them about the bacteria, about how I'm constantly feeling my ulnar nerve to make sure that it's not lumpy or anything, and there's no mycobacteria sitting in. I mean, it turns out that I was talking to a infectious disease doc. I didn't know who that person was when I went for my interview, but I'm like talking about my ulnar nerve, what the bacterium is, how many years it was, but I knew something about it. They can tell that I knew something about whatever it was that I did on my community service or my medical shadowing or whatever, right? So I got in, I mean, believe me, though, medical school is not that hard as long as you have good study habits, all right? There's only 2 more years. You can do this, right? Don't let people think you can't. Tell you can't, all right? 4 years of college is a lot more painful than 2 years of med school. Right? Because the first 2 years are in the classroom in a traditional setting. And the other 2 are why you went to medical school, right? It's like you want to take care of patients, right? You want to educate the public. You want to improve health literacy, right? Say yes. Because you, better than everything in the past, you are the person that's going to make this country healthier, right? That's why you want to be in medicine. Okay, that's not the first 2 years, right? That's the second 2 years. So the second 2 years are really fun. You're in the clinic, you're doing stuff, you're learning how to interact with patients, you're learning how to interact with faculty and staff and the nursing assistants and the everybody on the floor, right? That's really fun. It's only 2 more years. You don't need to take time off, just do it. And then you'll go on to residency. So I feel like I have it all. You might not agree, but right? I mean, family, great, absolutely fantastic child. She loves me despite the fact, she'll joke about the fact that she was speaking Tagalog, asking for stuff in Tagalog before she was asking for stuff in English, because the babysitter was Filipino. And what's really bad is her name starts with an F. And so she had the Filipina talk. So I thought I should spend a little more time with her after that. But anyway, so she actually jokes. She can actually joke about that, because she didn't need me to dress her and feed her and change her diaper and stuff like that every waking minute, right? She's proud of the fact that I can take out a tumor this big, or that, you know, I can take care of cancer patients, or I can talk intelligently about health disparities and stuff like that. She's proud of the fact that, in fact, she helps me with my youth outreach program. You know, she teaches that stuff now. And so, you know, I didn't have a guidebook, I didn't have a roadmap for child rearing, but I just didn't listen to all those people who said that you're a bad mother if you don't do X, or you're a bad mother if you don't do Y, you know? So I feel like I was successful with that. And I think, I mean, I would write a book too. I would write the counterpoint if I had time, right? So community service, I think my community service is very small and directed. I don't do a whole bunch of, you know, runs and walks and raising money for this or that. I don't have the time to do that, right? I didn't miss a single one of my daughter's varsity swim meets, right, in high school. I was in the Navy. We all cover for, everybody has kids. We just, you know, cross cover so that nobody misses a play. My daughter, thankfully, did not do drama or theater, so I didn't have to do any of that. She did. She was in an opera, I have to say. That was painful, but it was in the summertime. But 2 hours, there's 6 hours a day for, you know, 3 weeks. That was really painful. But they had 4 performances. It was Pagliacci at Catholic University. It was great, but that was it. So that's my secret. That's my whole list of secrets. If now you guys are going to be really successful, right? I'm going to open it up for questions for you so that I can stop talking. But none of you are sleeping, so. All right.
So you talked about how you kind of, you know, got around, well, have a child and, you know, you can raise your child very well. How do you, like, have a husband and, like, not, you know, be each other's strangers?
Oh, well, okay, that's a good question. So the question was, what about the husband? Yeah, well, you kind of need that for the child. No, one of the problems that we have as women, and you know, it's like there's 2 different completely separate camps on this, right? One is that the woman is like the caretaker and blah, 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 you know. It's like the traditional woman model, right? Okay, you're already not that, okay? And then the other thing is, oh, we have to go 50-50 on everything, right? Okay, that doesn't work either, right? Because you're the one in med school, right? So unless he's going to be taking, you know, half the exams, right, and doing half the labs and reading half the book and stuff like that, he's going to have to pick up the slack, right? And have to do a little bit more. And if you're the one that's flexible, be flexible when you can be, right? But if you're not flexible, like my husband's practice is more clinical than mine is, or it was in the Navy. So I was like, you know, you gotta go pick her up, because I'm in the OR, right? But the first time, well, not the first time, but the instinct for women is I'm gonna do it all because I'm like, you know, I'm a better parent, right? And the guy is just, you know, kind of the caretaker. He's the breadwinner, right? I mean, that's what his job is, just to get a bank account, you know, kind of balanced, right? But that's actually not true. If you don't let the guy do something, right, you'll never know. So what we tend to do as women is we take the traditional role until it like makes us into crazy people, right? And then leave the guy there, and then we go, well, what are you doing? Well, you never asked him to do anything, and you didn't let him do anything, right? So one of the classic things I heard from one of my colleagues who's an orthopedic surgeon with 4 kids, she got deployed on the Comfort in the beginning of the current war, Operation Iraqi Freedom, right? And she got deployed on the Comfort. And that was kind of an open-ended deployment. We didn't know when they were coming back. But she left like in March or something. I'm not sure, June, I think, right? And her baby was like, you know, 4 months old or something like that, right? So she goes off on the Comfort, and her husband stays behind with these 4 kids. One is an infant, right? And when she came back, she actually, what she says is it made him a better dad because she wasn't taking away stuff from him. I mean, they're capable, all right, regardless of what you might think or how they act sometimes, right? Men are very capable. The dads are very capable. It's just we don't let them do anything. Okay, so you got to stop. You got to let them do stuff, and not just take out the garbage. I mean, it's like the guy is not your servant, right? You got to kind of look at it that way. He's not just driving. He's not taking the garbage, not making the money, you know, and stuff like that. It's you got to treat him like a human, you know, like and let him take care of your kid. I mean, you know, if he drops your baby, you know, it's his baby too, right? No. So. I mean, some people will say, oh, you know, we need to do these, you know, date nights and stuff like that. I'm not the contrivant type of person. I can't do stuff like that. I mean, the thing is we had respect for each other's outside interests. You know, so he rides his bike. I hate riding bikes. You know, but he goes and rides bikes with whoever those guys are that he rides bikes with, right? He used to play handball, you know. I mean, he's from New York. What is handball, you know? And so, and I play soccer. So I have played soccer continuously, fall, winter, and spring, and then the summer tournaments since 1992 when I came back. I mean, before that, like since I was 10. But when I came back to Bethesda in 1992 for my fellowship at UC Irvine, I came back and then immediately got onto an outdoor women's team, and I've been playing. I play like 7 games a week, you know, if the schedule works out.
Dr. Macri, I wanted to ask you a question about what medical institutions are doing policy-wise and in terms of practice in supporting physician staff to have it all, to have a balanced life, to be able to engage socially and to have hobbies and to have outside interests that go beyond just working in the hospital or in the clinic. Because what you've been talking about is really, in essence, the desire that's, I think, common amongst us all to have balance in our life and to have richness and diversity within our life's experiences. So what are hospital institutions doing to support that?
Okay, so hospitals or medical institutions, I will say that starting in medical school, many medical schools do have student activities. So it's not, I mean, I drove through the campus, I was like, wow, do they have classes on Saturday? There's so many students out there. There's a gazillion different things you can choose from, right? In medical school, there's still a lot of stuff that you can do. The main thing is that they have things like interest clubs and stuff like that. And there's nothing that stands between you and making a club of your own if you so desire. So they have interest groups like surgery, you know, family medicine, international medicine, global health, you know, all these different interest groups. But they also have things like women in medicine. We have a Frisbee and a rugby team. I played rugby and soccer in med school, you know, and things like that. So they do encourage you to have that outlet, and in many cases will support it financially. So we have I have my orange soccer jersey from Temple. I have no idea where I got that from. But, you know, those are the types that they do support it financially, okay? But for faculty, the tenure rules have not changed. And the number of tenured female faculty, and especially tenured female faculty of color, any color, is extremely low relative to the entering classes of medical school in the last, say, 3 or 4 years. Okay, so there's not, because the tenure rules haven't changed. So I'm not seeing a huge change in among the faculty at an institution until they change those particular rules. But those rules won't change until there's critical mass among you know, board certified female, you know, or physicians of color to change those types of rules. Now, there has been legislation in terms of the 80-hour work week. So now the 80-hour work week is something that has been legislated, so that's all you can work. When I was a surgery intern, our motto was, if you're only on call every other night, you miss half the cases. Right? Because we wanted to do every single, it was like a competition amongst the surgery interns to see who could do more cases, right? I mean, we would consider central line or something like that, that was a case, right? A DNC, a delivery, whatever it was a case. And so we had this little competition going, and the more hours you spent in the hospital, the more cases you got to do. Yeah, I know it's a little weird, but but that's how you learn stuff. Now it's legislated how many hours you can be in the hospital, so you can only be in the hospital. And then so the key is the other number of hours you are now responsible for making those useful. And so by legislation there is a bigger push towards balance. But we can't legislate how you treat the father of your child and your child, right? So those are the things that I think that the medical schools can't tell you how to do that.
Unfortunately, we are coming to the end of our session. This has been a really engaging and very fun conversation to have with you, Dr. Macri. So thank you so much for your time, for your expertise, and for sharing really some insights into how to achieve balance in a life in medicine. It's great to hear that that we can anticipate with great optimism that being in medicine is one that will be very fulfilling and very rich across all aspects of our lives. So thank you very much. Let's thank Dr. Macri for her time.